When it comes to photos and videos, not always do we need a lot of gear to do this, but in a lot of ways, there are tools out there that'll make a better photo or a better video simply because they're made to make certain things happen for you and make it easier to do that. So that's why this week we're talking about the iPhone 14 and a loadout or an accessory list or a gear list of things that I use with my iPhone to make better photos or videos. So the first thing that I use when it comes to creating content and making sure that I have the ability to accessorize with my iPhone is by using a small rig video cage. Now specifically for me, I use the one that's proprietary to the iPhone 14 Pro Max because I like that it's form-fitting, I like that it has 2 cold shoe mounts, I like that it has 10 quarter 20 mounts and a wrist strap place for anything that you want to attach, as well as a place on the back to attach third-party glass if you have things like a moment lens, whether it's the anamorphic or a wide or something else that you want to attach. It has plenty of places to put all kinds of other accessories. But if the video cage is the foundation of the platform, the rest of these attachments or accessories, if you will, are things that I personally use with my content. So keep that in mind. You might decide that these things don't work for you, or you might like to do other things. Maybe you don't like the brands that I chose and you think there are better ones. That's totally accessible. This is like my loadout, and you might do something completely different. So when it comes to this accessory list from here out, I just want to make that point that the video cage is definitely something to pick up if you're going to mount other things, but beyond that, the sky is the limit. These are just things that I chose. So usually one of the first things that I try to create a loadout with is a grip or a handle. Now specifically the one that I use is made by Small Rig as well. It's simply an alloy aluminum quarter 20 mounted grip, and the reason why I like this one specifically is because it is pretty weighted, it's pretty heavy, and I appreciate how large it is. So instead of having to do the old school pinch method or balance with the pinky underneath, it gives you a better place to grip onto the iPhone and gives you better purchase. So that way when you're creating content, you're not worried about dropping and breaking a really expensive iPhone. Now once I have something to grip the phone with, the next thing I think about is a way to set it down without actually having to hold it. And that's where a tripod comes in. So for me, this is one of the best things to pick up next, is a way to mount that camera or that phone and not have to hold it. So think about a tripod. No matter what you pick, no matter what the option is, it just gives you another place to mount that camera and be steady with your shots. And on top of that, they're all usually quarter 20 for the most part. So again, with that video cage, you have plenty of ways to mount it, whether vertically or horizontally. You have a lot of options, which is also good. Now, the next thing that I think about is for video creators specifically, because it's something that you wouldn't use as a photographer. But when it comes to creating content with the iPhone, there is nothing better than good audio. So using a mic when it comes to creating content, in my mind, is absolutely necessary with the iPhone. Even though the microphones in the iPhones are pretty good, you can't beat an external microphone. Whether you use something like this, which is a standard 35mm Video Mic Pro from Rode, or you use something else that's wireless like the Wireless Go 2, all of those are options, but for me, whatever you choose is going to be better than just using the iPhone itself. For instance, the camera audio I use here is way better when I don't use the onboard microphone and I use one like this. So obviously if I'm going to do it here, I want to do it with my iPhone as well, and that's why. Now the next thing on my list is a little controversial, because the question is something like this really necessary with how good iPhone lenses are today? Now this one specifically is an anamorphic by Moment. So for me, by applying the anamorphic lens in this case to the 48 megapixel standard lens, I now get a completely different image that I couldn't have originally. So this is one that may not be used all the time, but is one that you could use with both photo and video in very specific cases to give you a look that you're looking for. So that's why it makes it on my attachment list or my loadout list today. Now the next thing that I think about when it comes to the iPhone, and the last thing on my list here, is getting smooth footage. And for that, I typically use a gimbal on top of all of the internal features that the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max line give you with cinematic and active modes. So for me, using something like a gimbal just gives you better footage initially that you can then edit up later in post, because what you put into the camera is what you get out of it later in post. So the smoother it is initially, the better it's going to look on the end. So for me, using a gimbal is absolutely necessary in most cases, even when you have those features like cinematic or active mode, which give you that internal stabilization, which I already like, but just adding this one more thing makes it just a little bit better and a little bit easier to make your videos look a little bit more professional. You know, in the middle of a video when you forget to say something, well, it happens to me all the time. This time it is to talk about the newer RGB Video Light. This is one that is super helpful when it comes to creating content of any kind, because realistically, you can create a lot more when you have light than when you don't. So this one is, of course, USB-C. It is RGB, which is awesome. And it's pretty much just that. It's a video light for content creation. It has different modes. Like we said, there's RGB. It also does a little flashy if you want to do that. And then standard bright white or whatever. So think about that too for an attachment. But now's the time, if you haven't already, go down to the comments below and let me know what your dream loadout would be for your iPhone. Is it something that would incorporate some of these things, or would it be completely different? I would love to know your top 5 attachments if you had a list, just like I've given you here. And while you're down there, make sure to check out the description box, because all of the links to every piece of gear that I've listed here are there as well. So you don't have to pick any of them up if you want to. They're not sponsored in any way, but I did want to make it easier if you're looking for a good place to pick some of this up. So check that out as well. And last but not least, don't forget to check out the links for Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, because these are places that I can talk to you guys in between videos. We can have conversations, you can ask questions, all that kind of stuff. So don't forget to check out those as well. And with that, I'm going to hit you with a thank you so much. And I appreciate you checking this one out, and let me know what you're thinking about in the comments. I will see you guys in the next one.